All right, I'm gonna need you to bear with me on this journey of this video because the Lord's been hammering something into my thick head for the last, I don't know, 3 weeks, and it's been a saga. So I've got to set this up for you. So bear with me. I'm gonna try and do this quick. A few weeks ago, I was reading in Romans 7, where Paul talks about doing the things he doesn't want to do and the things he hates he does, and I was resonating with that because I often struggle, and I'm sure you can relate. I often struggle with when I'm stressed or tired or overwhelmed. You know, there are certain comfort foods or comfort activities that you turn to, and they're not always the best. There may not be bad inherently in and of themselves, but you're not turning to the Lord with what you should be turning to the Lord for, and you fall into some patterns that maybe you've worked really hard to break free from, and you fall back into those old patterns. And so I was praying through that, and as I was thinking about it, I was explaining it to the Lord that it almost feels like a compulsion, that I have to do those things. I turn to those things, and it made me think of it's like almost like I'm addicted to those, and when life gets tough, I turn back to that old pattern. And I was talking to a friend who spent years as a mental health counselor, and I was asking her about the standard treatment for addiction, and it's very common in that space to not just stop doing the addiction, but learning to replace the addiction with something else. And so you're not focused on any longer. You're not focused on the addiction and stopping it. You're focused on this new thing, and it's about where you're focused. And that made me start thinking about Philippians 4, where we're told, think about what is good and right and true and noble. And so I was chewing on that, and I was like, okay, it's not just about not doing these things, it's about doing something holy and replacing these old patterns with new patterns and figuring out how that all looks. And so I was chewing on that was in my brain. And then last week sometime, I was watching a video of a speaker. It was not a spiritual video, but he was talking about leadership and being a good leader. And he was using this analogy around goal setting of a skier. Now, I've never skied, so I don't know if this is actual ski science or whatever. So bear with me. If this is not accurate, just go with me. But he was saying that skiers are trained that when they're weaving through trees, they're trained to not look at the trees, but look at the path, to keep focused on the path in front of them, because they're going to ski towards whatever they're looking at. So if they're focused on not hitting the trees, they're going to hit a tree because that's what they're looking at. And as I heard that, it resonated with what I felt the Lord had been setting in my spirit for that week prior of, okay, what am I focused on and what am I looking at? Because I want to be fully in alignment with the Holy Spirit, and so I have to be focused on what He's doing. And so I was like, okay, I absorbed that in, I added that in, and it was just sitting, and it was swirling around, and it came to a head this week where I received some information, and it instantly threw me for a loop. I was confused, I was scared, I was frustrated, and I was in this space of just all these emotions swirling around and trying to be like, okay, God, what are you doing? What are you doing? And just all of those things happening. And I was praying through and trying to sort through all of those feelings and emotions. And this morning in church, we were worshiping before prayer, and as the Lord would have it in His sovereignty, all of the songs were about the Lord and His mighty power and being in His will and Him being bigger than our fear. And as I was singing those songs and worshiping the Lord, it settled in me just this question of, do you mean this, or do you mean it? Because you're focusing on what you think you're going to lose. You're focusing on what you thought you were going to have. You're focusing on the things that you can't do versus focusing on what I'm doing and seeking why I'm moving in a direction that I'm moving. And are you willing to step into that? And I had just watched a movie last night about Abraham sacrificing Isaac, and while he didn't understand what God was doing and why he would have to sacrifice his son, he was willing to do it. And the Lord said, are you going to focus on what you don't understand, the trees? Or are you going to focus on what I'm doing, the path? And I was just like moved to tears because it was such a moment of, okay, Lord, I say these things all the time. Like, I trust God and he's working and I want to be in his will. But when the skis hit the snow, am I going to focus on what I can't be doing and what I can't have and where I think I should be going? Or am I going to be focused on what he's actually doing? Because God is always working for our good. And I believe that, and I say it all the time. But when this information came into my mind and I was thrown for a loop and I had to figure out what I was going to do with it, my instinct was to hide and to pull back and to say, no, that's not right. That can't be right. That doesn't match up with what I thought was happening and what I thought was going on. And the Lord said, stop focusing on those things that you can't do. Stop focusing on what is a no for you and start focusing on what I'm doing. And maybe this won't be where the path leads, like what you think I'm doing. Maybe it's not where it's going to be, but are you willing to do it? Are you willing to put Isaac on the altar, regardless of what the outcome is? Because you have to trust that I will have an outcome that's perfect for you. And I had to say yes, obviously, because it's true. God is always working for our good. And if we're focused on what we think we should be doing or what we think he's doing, we're going to miss what he's actually doing. And I was so encouraged and so comforted, because what a place of peace to be, knowing that I don't have to determine my path. I don't have to decide what to do and what not to do. The Lord is guiding, and all I have to do is keep my eyes on him. Keep focused on him, and he will direct my steps. We're promised that in Proverbs, to trust in the Lord with all your heart, and he will show you the path to go. And that's so comforting. And so in all of those things that we're walking through, the chaos or the heartbreak or whatever you're feeling or going through, don't focus on the pain. Lord, I don't want this pain. I don't want this. I don't want this. Focus on the good things. I want joy. I want peace. I want trust. Those are the things I'm going to focus on, because we're going to go towards what we're focused on. So are you focused on Jesus, or are you focused on everything else? Because otherwise you're going to sink in the storm just like Peter. Don't focus on the waves. Don't focus on the trees. Focus on the path. Focus on what the Holy Spirit is doing and where he's leading you. And that's where true peace, true comfort, and true purpose comes from.